What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today we will be reviewing Maze Runner: The Scorch Trials. So Maze Runner: The Scorch Trials is the sequel to 2014's Maze Runner, and it was directed by Wes Ball once again, and also once again stars Dylan O'Brien as Thomas. After having escaped the maze, Thomas and the other survivors are forced to go on the run from an organization that is not what it says it is, and in doing so must undergo the desolate wasteland filled with diseased maniacs known as cranks, which was once known as the world, but is now known as the Scorch. So in order to review this movie, I kind of have to spoil the first one, which, I kind of already did. You know that they make it out of the maze and everything, but at the end of the first one, you learn that there was this company called Wicked, WCKD, and they're the ones that built the maze. The Earth has been destroyed by the sun. You know, it's that thing where the sun got too close and scorched the earth. And there is now a disease called the flare, which attacks the brain and essentially turns you into like a plant-like zombie thing. And Wicked is that company that's still trying to find a cure for this disease, and this group of kids that escaped the maze were immune. And that's why they were put in the maze in the first place, to study their brain activity and hopefully get a cure out of it, you know, makes sense. But the way that Wicked is going about doing this is quite sinister, and these kids decide, no way, we are getting out of here. So they go on the run from Wicked out into the Scorch, which, as I said, is filled with people who have the flare, which are called cranks. Like when you get the flare and you're just gone, you're called a crank. You're basically a zombie. Right off the bat, this movie is a little bit more well-directed than the first. The opening of this movie is particularly strong. This movie as a whole is visually more impressive than the first one. There's just this great sense of urgency throughout the whole thing that really lended to the action sequences and the more suspense-type sequences dealing with the cranks. Now let's talk about that action, because the action in this movie is incredible. The action in the first film was incredible, and it is no different in this film. They are still using wide tracking shots so you can see everything that's going on. When people are running, they're not just running, they are barreling. What do you expect in a movie called The Maze Runner? The camera just follows them. There's no quick cut, shaky cam crap. It's all extremely well captured. You can see everything that's going on. Another thing the director Wes Ball did really well is really capturing the conditions, the hot environment of the world now that it has been scorched by the sun and everything is a desert wasteland. It's also genuinely frightening. Like, some of these scenes with the cranks, they're pretty scary. There are some jump scares, but they're not cheap. They actually work pretty effectively. They did everything in their power to make sure that the movie felt as realistic as it could under such far-fetched circumstances. The Scorch feels real in this movie. It feels like a place you could go to. It feels like there's things you could touch and you could actually walk around in it. Also, the score in this movie, John Passano, I don't know how to pronounce that name, I probably butchered it, but he was also the composer for the first Maze Runner, which in my review I forgot to mention a couple things actually. One, I forgot to mention how great the score was, and two, I forgot to mention a major plot point. I didn't mention in the first one that all their memories were wiped. Like when they come up in the box, they can't remember anything. I didn't mention that, but you probably have already seen The Maze Runner. Don't watch the review for the Scorch Trials if you haven't seen The Maze Runner, because I just spoiled the entire end of the first Maze Runner film for you. And the score in this movie is no different. It is so good, so adrenaline pumping. It's honestly one of the best parts of this entire series. Another great thing about this movie is the world that it sets up. Now, the term world building is used pretty exploitively, I would say. People use it way too much when they say this movie had fantastic world building. But this movie really did, without even telling you much. All you know is that the world has been destroyed by the sun, it is a desert wasteland, there are ruined cities everywhere, and there's these basically zombies out there. It's like, that's a pretty simple thing, right? Well, not really, because see, the film doesn't have to tell you directly, hey, this is something cool about this world. You have to look for yourself. You can see in the background certain things, just in the way that the world is set up and the way the sets are designed. You just pick up on tiny things that make the world building really great. And that brings me to another thing. The production design in this movie, in my opinion, is much better than the first, and that's because they actually have a lot more to work with. In the first film, it was just a giant maze and the glade, and like one shot of the Scorch from a distance. In this movie, you have a Wicked facility, which is huge, by the way. And I don't mean wicked as in cool, I mean wicked as in the organization in the film, WCKD, Wicked. That was extremely well designed. And then you also have the Scorch with these humongous fallen buildings, this city. There's a taken out bridge in a couple scenes. The expansive desert, the mountains. They, without spoiling anything about this movie, they come across something, they're like other buildings, that were very well designed, some really great attention to detail. And just like the first movie, the pacing in this film is perfect. There's never a part that really gets boring. There are parts that slow down a little bit, but they never get, like, actually boring. This entire movie is extremely gripping. Like, from the opening scene alone, you're instantly just, like, sucked into this world. It never stops moving, and this suspense in this movie with the cranks, it reminded me of The Last of Us. You know those sequences in The Last of Us when you were in a building that didn't have any power and everything is dark and you hold the clicking of the clickers and the runners and things like that, and you couldn't see them and you didn't know when you were going to be spotted, you had to assume where they are so that you could stealth kill them? That level of suspense is the level of suspense in this movie. It was so freaky. Even though I had already seen it, when I rewatched it for this review, it still got me. Like, it still kind of got under my skin. I was like, this is really creepy. Aside from the action in these movies, easily the best part about this trilogy is the characters, which are much better this time around. One of the biggest problems with movies where all the main characters are teens is that they never feel like teenagers. They feel like 30-year-olds. Now, I'm not saying that the actors who played these characters are all teenagers, because most of them aren't. They still feel like teenagers, and that really has to go to the casting director. Aside from that, though, they're not idiots. They don't make stupid decisions. There's also some great moral ambiguity infused into the script of these people questioning, are we doing the right thing? Should we go back to Wicked? Maybe what they're doing and how they're going about it isn't so bad after all. Also, can I just say, Thomas is such a good person. This guy is so determined to save as many people as he can. He will do anything to achieve it. Which leads me to another thing. The characters are much more likable this time around, particularly Newt. The relationship between Newt and Thomas develops in subtle ways in this movie, but by the end of it, you realize just how close they're getting. It's a great friendship. And by the end of the movie, these survivors, it starts to become nice little ragtag family, you know? Like, it reminds me of the end of Aliens with Newt and Hicks and Ripley, how they were like a nice little trio, you know? And you loved all of them. They were just this awesome group. That's how it kind of feels with this group towards the end of this film. Also, the writing in this film is actually pretty good. It's surprisingly funny, because the first Maze Runner, there was no comedy in that. There was nothing in the first one that was funny. It was an extremely serious and a refreshingly dark take on the YA adaptation. This film, however, there actually are some scenes that are pretty funny and they will get a kick out of you. There's also some really, really touching moments. I mentioned in my review for The Maze Runner that the drama in that film got surprisingly dark and raw at times. And I will say that this film, while with the comedy, is a tad bit darker than the original. And that led to some really deep and emotionally impactful moments between these characters. There's some guilt that Thomas begins to feel when one of the people in the group says, I never thought I'd say it, but I miss the Glade, man. Now let's talk about the performances, because they were great in the last film, and they are once again great in this film. They are top notch. There is a death in this film with one of the people in the group. I won't say who it is, but when it happens, it is so surprisingly effective. It might actually bring a tear to your eye, but it was handled so well, just the right amount of gentleness to make it almost as sad as, spoilers for the Hunger Games, Rue's death in the first Hunger Games. Moment of silence for Rue. This movie is surprisingly brutal for a PG-13 rating. You could tell that they really wanted to get down in the dirt with the action in this movie, make it feel really real, really gritty, and in my opinion, they did an excellent job of that. Also, can I just say that the zombies in this movie sprint? They sprint. They're not those grandma zombies from The Walking Dead that just limp. I don't understand how someone in that show gets eaten by a zombie. They're so slow. Now, I understand if there's a horde and you're trapped, then yeah, you're a goner. But just that, hordes aren't extremely common, at least I don't think. I don't know. I don't watch The Walking Dead, obviously. But I don't know. It's just, I never understand how someone in that show gets caught. This movie is 28 days later times 10. So, 280 days later. The zombies in this movie are just so fast. They're just sprinting almost as fast, sometimes even faster than the actors. As for the VFX and CGI, a surprising amount of the Scorch was actually practically built, but there was a lot of CGI implemented with it, and in my opinion, it was very, very well integrated. Also, on the cranks, for about the first half of this movie, all of the cranks are practical, it's just actors with makeup. And for the second half, the cranks become CG, and while you can tell that they're CG, it doesn't mean it's bad CG. It was pretty well done in my opinion. I only have a couple negatives with this movie, and part of it is the writing a little bit. There are some cliched lines in the movie that thankfully do work because of these actors' great performances, but that doesn't change the fact that the lines are there. Also, there's a lot of new characters introduced, and particularly 2 of them you're supposed to care about, and you don't really care about them. I mean, if one of them died, you would be like, oh man, that sucks, but like, it's not like that death I was talking about before with one of the people in the group who dies. It's nowhere near that effective. I'm not saying that one of these 2 characters dies. I'm just saying that if one of them did, it wouldn't really have hit me. So in conclusion, despite a few technical and story issues, the Scorch Trials is a great follow-up to The Maze Runner with plenty of thrilling action and effective drama to satisfy and get you hyped for the next one. I thoroughly enjoyed it myself. I don't think it's the best film in the trilogy, but I do really love it. And I'm going to give Maze Runner The Scorch Trials a B+. So guys, what did you think of Maze Runner The Scorch Trials? Whatever you thought, let me know down in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Or what did you think of the first Maze Runner film? Or what is your favorite movie series that has been adapted from a young adult novel series? You have Harry Potter, The Hunger Games, The Maze Runner, Divergent. You have all these options. Definitely let me know down in the comments your thoughts on that. That didn't come out quite right, sorry. So yeah guys, thanks so much for watching, it really does mean a lot. Look forward to my review of the 3rd film in the Maze Runner trilogy, The Death Cure. That will be coming to you very soon. Thanks so much for watching, it really does mean a lot. I'll see you in the next video, and until then, keep writing, keep shooting, and keep editing.